I want to thank you for investing in growing this year. You may not see it, you may not feel it, but the work you're doing is paying off. It's not only making a difference for you, but it's making a difference for others around you. That's how this whole process works. The more you work on yourself, the bigger difference you'll make for other people. And over time, all the changes will seem transformative. But in the meantime, it feels like hard work. So I just want to let you know we at Atticus are cheering for you. Keep up the good work. And congratulations on having a great 2024.
Welcome to Great Practice, Great Life by Atticus Incorporated. What if you could hang out with successful small and solo law firm attorneys, ask them about their successes and failures, their business strategies and mindset habits, then take an insight or two to guide your own growth in your practice? Each week, Steve Riley shares an in-depth look at how to work less while maintaining high client service standards, reduce your stress levels while growing your income, and find time to make changes when you are time-starved. Steve is a lawyer coach for more than 20 years and a former trial attorney. His goal is to provide strategies to help you balance your lives and grow your practice. Now, here's Steve.
Hey, it's Steve Riley. Welcome to the last episode of 2024. Yep, we're saving the best for last. Welcome to the best of 2024, where we're celebrating some of the most popular episodes of this year. Now, before we get too deep into this episode, I want to thank you for investing in growing this year. You may not see it, you may not feel it, but the work you're doing is paying off. It's not only making a difference for you, but it's making a difference for others around you. That's how this whole process works. The more you work on yourself, the bigger difference you'll make for other people. And over time, all the changes will seem transformative. But in the meantime, it feels like hard work. So I just want to let you know we at Atticus are cheering for you. Keep up the good work. And congratulations on having a great 2024. Towards the end of the introduction, I'm going to give you a brief suggestion on how you can maximize your experience of 2024. I also want to make a quick announcement of a virtual workshop that I'm leading in February. This workshop is designed just for lawyers that have some element of the billable hour in their practice. The workshop's called Level Up Your Billable Practice. The question is, are you leaving money on the table in your billable practice? So on February 27th, I'm personally going to teach a brand new virtual workshop that's designed to help you maximize your income if you're in the billable hour practice. This workshop is designed for training new associates, for paralegals, but most importantly, for attorneys that own their own practice. So if you're looking for ways of maximizing your income through the billable practice, this workshop is for you. I put some information in the show notes. Check it out. I'd love to see you there. Now, the question is, how do we select the best of episodes? Actually, I want to let you know not only was it difficult, but you helped us out a lot. Most of the episodes were chosen by you. These were the highlights of the most listened to episodes in 2024. Now, it was difficult because we obviously couldn't play all those episodes. So our team went through and pulled out some of the highlights that they thought would help you set up you and your practice for a great 2025. Now, as you listen, here are some of the things I'm going to encourage you to listen for and apply to your life and practice in 2025. Craig Goldenfarb shares why prioritizing your team and fostering a positive work culture can transform and help you grow your practice. Now, with 2025 around the corner, Michele Fuller is going to talk to us about how to manage chaos through what was for her the toughest quarter of her career and how to ultimately stay focused to achieve your best results while everything feels chaotic. The next will be the pitfalls of unconsciously scaling your practice and how to avoid them, as explained by Aaron Rothert. Now, we can't leave 2024 without connecting financial success and happiness thanks to Kevin Snyder and his innovative happiness scorecard. And then, of course, Mike Michalowicz is going to share with us expert tips on moving from lawyer to business owner through effective delegation. And last but not least, Valerie Peterson is going to summarize the 10 growth strategies that we used in our 100th episode. A brilliant recap to an amazing year. Now, as we roll into 2025, if there's any topics or any issues you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to email me at steve.riley, so steve.riley@atticusadvantage.com. I'll put my email in the show notes so you can pop me an email. Now, as we at Atticus wrap up the best of 2024, I'm going to encourage you to do an exercise to wrap up the best of 2024 for you. I'm going to invite you to write down a minimum, just a minimum, of what was great about 2024 for you. What did you learn? What achievements would you like to shout out to yourself about? What goals did you get accomplished? What goals are you making progress on? What relationships do you feel great about? Where do you feel like you've made great traction and made great progress in your great practice and great life for 2024? I'm going to encourage you to sit down, write it out, and then when you're done, put it somewhere where you can reference it so you can get a great sense of how you're making progress in your great practice, great life. Now, remember, a great practice is not free. It is earned, and a great life is cultivated. So this gives you a great framework to look and see where you're making progress on those goals. As we close out 2024, we want to thank you for being part of our great practice and great life. Your support, feedback, enthusiasm, collaboration is greatly appreciated. So here's to another year of learning, growing, and working together. I hope you have a fantastic new year, and I look forward to being here with you to help you have a great practice and great life in 2025. And today I've asked you to tell me, from your perspective, the secrets of becoming an 8-figure attorney. Are you up for this?
I am ready to go.
You ready to go? All right. So how many secrets do you want to share today?
I chose 6, easy number, and I could probably do 10, but I picked top 6 for today.
Top 6 for today. Okay. So tell me, what's the number one? What's number one for you?
I think number 1 may even be the most important, which is firm culture. And what I mean by culture basically is how you treat the people who work for you. And I say the people who work with you. And I actually don't talk about any of my staff as working for me. There's a little mental shift that I started about 20 years ago that regardless of who they are, even if it's a receptionist, I say you work with me. So that's the first little mental shift, is that nobody's under me, nobody's below me. We're all teammates, and I think everybody plays an equal role and has an equally important position in my law firm. So that's the first little mental shift I made. And then about 10 or 12 years ago, 11 years ago, I hired, as at the time an office administrator, someone from Disney World. And her name is Michele. And she was in HR at Disney World in Orlando. And I realized quickly that I was getting for free her training at Disney World, which is the happiest place on earth, supposedly. And she came in, and her immediate mission statement for my law firm was to make it the happiest workplace on earth. And through my playing along with her and encouraging her for the last 11 years, she has made me focus on work culture as the number 1 item as to how you can grow, is focus on your people and making them happy. And we have so many employee initiatives and employee programs that make sure they know we care about them as human beings and not just as revenue producers.
Okay, so that's crazy, because most plaintiffs' lawyers I know would think that is the stupidest idea they've ever heard. And they would probably argue the most important strategy to becoming a top-tier 8-figure lawyer is marketing, advertising, more marketing, more advertising, more marketing, and some additional advertising. And of course, dominating social media, including Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all the things. And you lead with culture. So that's crazy. So let me ask you this. Let's set this up. So how many people did you have when you start your practice? How many employees?
1.
1. Okay. How many do you have currently?
76.
And how many of those are attorneys?
10.
10. Okay. And when you hired Michele, how many employees did you have?
6.
Okay. So you went from 6.
Sorry, I hired my first office manager at 6.
Oh, at
Michele
6.
probably at about 30. So I hired my first person to be in charge of people at 6.
I gotcha. That's very good. That's very good. And it's important because I talk to plaintiffs' lawyers a lot. You obviously a lot more than I do. But for them, it's always about the advertising, and advertising, whether it's online, TV, it doesn't matter. Advertising. You lead with culture. Why? It
Well,
doesn't
it's
make any
interesting
sense.
because you can advertise. I advertise a ton. I spend millions of dollars in advertising. But if you've got turnover as a concept that business owners and lawyers do understand, and they can at least conceptualize the fact that turnover of employees costs you money. They can't directly relate it to a return on investment, but they know that turnover costs you money. So if you have a great firm culture, you'll have the turnover that I have, which is basically none. I have 76 people. Nobody leaves unless they move or their spouse moves. Nobody leaves my company because of the culture. And that is a direct relationship between what you earn is your longevity of employees. I have at least 10 people who've been with me 10 or 15 years because they won't leave because of the firm culture. They're not going to find a better firm culture. Who's going to work all those cases that you spend the millions of dollars getting? Who's going to intake those cases? Who's going to work them up? Who's going to settle them? If it's not you, if it's not those employees who know what they're doing, those employees that have been there forever, those employees who do an excellent job. There's a direct correlation between a lack of turnover, consistency of employees, and devotion of employees, and work product. That all creates money. And one example I have of that is it drives every lawyer nuts when they do the lap around the office and they see everybody on their cell phone. That's like, do you have a cell phone policy? Do you have a net nanny where you monitor their strokes on their keyboards to make sure they're not messing around? I have none of that because of my work culture and the people I hire and the careful screening and training we do. I don't have people who would be willing to violate this firm culture by messing around on shopping and by messing around on a cell phone, because there's such accountability with the people in themselves and around them that they'd feel awful. It's not those type of people who work at my office. Not to say they don't play around on a computer and waste an hour a day or whatever they waste or take a cell phone call. It's that it's just not part of my culture. Now, you think that doesn't make me money? It makes me tons of money that they're not messing around on their cell phone. Because if one person sees another person do it, they're going to be doing it, and it creates a cancer in the office. We have no cancers in our office. We have people who want to work. That's all work culture. They owe it to me in their head. They have a feeling of debt that was caused by the fact that we give them such a wonderful place to work. That's one specific reason I make a lot of money, because I have those types of people and I've created that atmosphere for them to love where they work.
It's fascinating because my experience of being a plaintiff's attorney, working with other plaintiff's attorneys, watching other lawyers run their practices, there's a lot of screamers in the plaintiff's world. The lawyers that don't manage well, they scream, they yell, they throw stuff, they make lots of shows of dominance of, in with each other. And I've worked with a lot of plaintiffs' lawyers as clients and extraordinarily gifted trial lawyers. And they don't seem to grow beyond a certain level. Like trial lawyers in particular, they seem to cap out. If they're boutique firms, they cap out. And a lot of plaintiffs' firms cap out right about 6 to 12. Maybe they get up to 30, and then they start to stall. And then the owner works themselves to death trying to fill in the gaps. So it's fascinating to hear you say that the number one secret is actually to think and build culture, because ultimately you retain clients. They take great care of your client. You retain team. The team probably gets referrals from clients, create an incredible experience. So your stress, client complaints, team drama is actually extraordinarily less. So it's a fascinating number one to lead with. That's really great. Anything else you want to say about culture?
There's so many different employee programs we have that were designed by Michele with my authority, that part of the seminar I give talks about maybe 5 or 10 of the employee, we call them employee happiness programs. And they're well named because they're things that make employees happy to work here. So we've got a whole menu of different things we do, whether it's financial or fun or games or competitions, just to make it feel like it's not a chore to come to work, and just designing those things by intent, whether you do it yourself or whether you're lucky enough to have department leaders who can do that. Just gamifying some things you do at the work and having some fun. We actually have a game room in our office that I designed with video games, bumper pool, foosball, popcorn machine. When you get to my level, that's something that distinguishes us from other law firms is we have an actual game room and people actually go in there. When you get to a certain level, you got to come up with creative stuff. That's an example of something that distinguishes us from another law firm.
Love it. And what I thought I would do today is bring you on to talk about the secrets of how you had the best quarter ever. But it wasn't a smooth sailing at the time, was it?
No, it was, I think, the most challenging quarter of my career.
So you had the most financially productive while at the same time the most challenging. So let's just talk for a minute. What was happening, what you call challenging?
My husband and I went on a 2-week vacation, and my first day back was October 5th. And so you're feeling great, rested, recharged, right? And that was the first of several resignations of my core team. And as you mentioned, I have a lot of businesses, but one of the challenges or one of the things that make my life interesting, which I love, but is a challenge at times, is that I am married to somebody who practices in California. So we actually live in Michigan and California in split time. So there is a time difference. There's the challenge of handling and managing and supporting a remote team. When I'm the one generally who's remote. So all of those challenges were baked in. And so I come back, I'm in California, set to be there for 3 weeks. And that was the first of many resignations that cascaded. And I had to drop everything. And like the record needle goes. So I had to drop everything and really just focus on my practice and manage chaos, manage me and my emotions around it. And just get to work. And I didn't expect that. While at the same time, I hold a 2-day professional conference focused on special needs planning, and the hotel went on strike. And so I had to handle that with a diminished staff in the middle of all of this. And
Plus
it wasn't
manage clients.
Oh, yeah. And keep money coming through the door.
Keep money coming through the door, hire new people, manage clients, manage hearings, manage
Yep.
cash flow.
Mhm.
And so you had a massive, and basically what it was, and I'll see if I can summarize it. We had a more or less a team lead that
Mhm.
kind of poisoned the well.
Oh, she led the coven.
Yeah. So and this has happened in other law firms. And the reasons why don't really matter too much because it's happened. I've seen it happen before. It's happened to me. It's happened to other lawyers. We can have a whole podcast on how to prevent it from happening. But
Yes.
what you did next and how you work through, quite frankly, a firestorm and produce the greatest financial quarter of your career is more about what I'm excited about and want to have you share. Because if you can do this while your house is on fire, you can maintain cash flow, you can maintain your marketing, you can move projects forward, and you can restaff 3 or 4 key positions, pull off a successful conference, stay sane, not get sick.
I did not get sick, which was a huge win.
Yeah. And really pivot your firm and refocus your firm. And most lawyers would have lost money. Most lawyers would have been crushed. Instead, you doubled down on your focus and got really focused around your cash flow focuser. You got really focused on a couple of things and had a phenomenal quarter. So I asked you back on the podcast because, and we're probably also going to put this interview of you in our member site, because you did 3 or 4, maybe 5 strategies that if you do when there's a storm and you can sail through the storm, if you do these 4 or 5 strategies when the water's calm, you'll be even more effective. And I want you to share those strategies because there's a big distinction between effectiveness and efficiency.
Mm.
And effectiveness is, and this is a Peter Drucker quote, effectiveness is doing the right thing. Efficiency is doing the right thing well. So you have to make a choice about being focused. What's the right thing to do? And time management techniques are for me about efficiency. So we're going to blend focus and time management together to chart a path through the storm. And you did it in a brilliant way, but in a very simple way that's so simple
Mhm.
that most of our members have it in their hands but they're not using it. It's like we've given them this really powerful tool and they're not using it. So how did you do it? Let's just begin at the beginning. So we knew things were on fire. Things are crazy.
Oh, yeah.
The typical thing that lawyers do when things are crazy is they just grab a shovel, they grab a fire extinguisher, and they run around putting fires out. And you didn't do that. You actually went the opposite direction. So talk to me about strategy one. What was the first thing that you did?
So that cascade of mass resignation was my fire, along with a strike at the venue. That's what my fire looked at. But a fire can take different forms. So it could be a divorce, it could be a parent's health issues, a child, or your own health issues. So it doesn't matter what shade of red the fire is. It's
fire.
there, present, and needs to be managed, and it certainly impacts your effectiveness at work. And so I think it's all about, I think that you're right. It's really about effectiveness and how could I be the most effective? So I couldn't, very quickly, I realized I myself could not outwork the problem, right? So I have an active caseload, and now I have no support staff that can handle that. And so I got very clear. And that one thing was mindset. I think that was really important, is that was an opportunity, even though in the midst of chaos, you're smelling the smoke and your house is on fire. In the midst of chaos, I chose to look at it as an incredible opportunity to get really clear about doing what I really enjoy doing, where I don't want to do this type of work anymore. I just got hyper focused and things that I'd been talking about for, oh my gosh, a couple of years, about just focusing on one specific area of my practice that I really love doing. And it gave me the freedom to do that. And I didn't realize that how much some of the forces around me were holding me back from implementing some really key things. And so that's why I think mindset was a huge thing, because if I was just like, oh, this is terrible, this is the worst thing that could ever happen to me, I sometimes had to force myself to really focus my thinking and clarity about what the opportunity it was that was afforded to me, that I never would have had the courage. I would never have had the courage to come back and clean house and get rid of my staff, a significant portion of my staff. But yet that's what I actually needed to happen. And so your fire may not look like that, but what opportunity does it afford you that maybe was holding you back? And could it be get really clear about spending quality time with your family? But it's that moment of focus that you think, what is this opportunity? What is this lesson that I needed to learn? And that was it. It was like, quit holding back on and holding on to things that the Marie Kondo, I needed to Marie Kondo my practice. And I can do that to my closet. And people have a hard time letting go of some of those things that don't serve you, bring you joy. And I think that's what I needed to do. Was it allowed me to Marie Kondo my own practice. And the more I focused in on that, the more joy I got in getting rid of things. And it was again, that was the cascading effect, where I started cleaning house everywhere without mercy. And it feels so good. I feel so much lighter in every respect. And that means physically, literally going to clean out closets. And I'm like, what are we holding on to 5 boxes from old printers? What are we doing with things like that? There's layers of accumulation of clutter. And it can look like literally empty boxes sitting around that you're storing. But it could also be caseload, the types of cases that don't bring you joy. You don't have to do that work. And it gave me permission to not do that work anymore.
Nothing is going to impact your law practice like AI. The impact of AI on the legal industry will be transformative. The question is, are you prepared? Now, I've done a podcast on this previously, the 3 challenges of integrating AI into your law practice. One of the things I want to remind you is that we're teaching in 2025 a Grow Your Practice with AI course. Now, this will be taught 4 times live, but it includes 22 hours of previously recorded episodes in 2024. So episodes that we taught everything from how to use AI to look at deposition, go through complex documents, how to train your team using AI as a shortcut for team training. All those different courses are recorded and ready for your viewing. Now, if you're an Atticus member, it's already included in your membership. All you have to do is sign up for the class. We'll teach it 4 times live in 2025. Now, if you're new to Atticus and you're not an existing member, the investment is $1,500 for this program. $1,500 covers it all of 2025. Furthermore, if you are an audience member and you want to take advantage of a special code just for audience members, the code is AI Podcast 300. So when you register, it takes $300 off your investment. So the $1,500 drops to $1,200. So if you haven't taken advantage of this, it's a no-brainer deal. So if you're new to Atticus and you want to check us out, this is a great way of checking us out. It's a virtual program, so you don't have to travel anywhere. I promise you, you'll make 10 times that investment back. So with that, the information on how to register is in the link below. Look forward to seeing you there. I think sometimes, and this was a mistake I made when I was practicing, I would add people. And I think probably for me, as I think about it, because I did both personal injury work for a decade and estate planning elder law for a decade and some corporate work thrown in there, the mistakes I made were, let's just call scaling unconsciously or growing unconsciously. And I think I distilled it down to 3 big mistakes. I think about it. One would be when I got really busy, Aaron, I would just hire people. And it wasn't really a strategic process of hiring. It just was, I'm overwhelmed. I need to hire somebody. Let me put somebody here. And I really didn't think it through well. Like I just found somebody, put them in the way of whatever that work was that was stressing me out or that needed to be done. And I didn't really have a strategic thought process or any type of analysis like what you've coached people on with our 3 times performance rule, the rule of 3. There are things that I just was unconscious about as a practitioner that would make me make really poor decisions, not necessarily hiring decisions, but also kind of process decisions. So hiring somebody quickly and putting them in the way of the work was probably the most classic mistake. Does that make sense to you?
It does. And so you're making a distinction there that I think is important to point out, the distinction between the hiring and the people decisions and the process decisions, and a reactionary attitude toward hiring that was unconscious, led to unconscious scaling. So I think that's interesting, that idea of unconscious scaling. What were the results of that unconscious scaling, sort of first? And then a follow-up to that is what led you to the shift from unconscious scaling to more conscious scaling in your practice?
That's a great. So it's a great question. Lots of mistakes. So lots of mistakes. I hired poorly. I hired the wrong person for the process. I tried to get too many people doing too many different things in the process. The first mistake is just that unconscious hiring, which was more or less a defensive strategy to stress. Being stressed out and overwhelmed, I just would hire somebody, fling them in the way, and throw work at them and expect that to work. The second mistake I made, which you can flip into a strategy if the audience can, is not understanding my process. Now, as lawyers, we're trained to communicate verbally and in writing. We don't communicate visually. This is one of the reasons in our programs I push flow charting so aggressively, diagramming how your process works. So I think the second mistake I made, or flipping at the second strategy I learned, was before hiring again, I needed to understand how my process was working. So I understand how the person I was hiring impacted the process, which was a mistake I still continue to repeat to this day because I have to slow down to speed up. I got to slow down to think, how's this process work? There's a way of improving this process. Why are we doing this process? This is a dumb process. And I haven't really mastered any other way of doing this other than getting everybody involved with the process and diagramming it. And when I was practicing, we did this on not whiteboards, but on Pana boards or smart boards, so you could electronically diagram the process, so you could see the process. The third mistake, though, when it came to scaling, was not understanding the end game strategically. What am I trying to build here from a revenue perspective? I never really would sit down and think through first, what's the process? 2, what am I trying to produce revenue wise? And then ultimately who the people should be. I think the biggest mistake I've made and other lawyers make, my additional mistake that I'm adding on as a freebie mistake, is before you hire people, before you start jamming more work through the process, one of the things I learned to do was quit taking unprofitable cases and increase my pricing. So that was one of the things that I had to learn the hard way. So as you're looking to scale up, part of the scaling up requires a conscious awareness of what the heck are you doing right now and why are you doing that and what's that process look like? A lot of lawyers get confused, and I did, on trying to grow quickly. And the problem with growing quickly, sometimes you do not grow sustainably. So one of my rules, if you're going to grow, you want to grow sustainably so you don't go backwards. You want to think about how does this work so sustainable, which is a pretty big, at least for me, a pretty big deal. Sustainable growth is really what I'm after, sustainable cash flow. Otherwise, you see that up and down cash flow. We see that a lot in our clients where they just hire somebody, throw them in there, and they don't have a real good understanding of why they hired, other than they were stressed out and freaked out and they needed some help. So they just hired this person and put them between them and the work and hope to God that would work out. I think for me, it's one of the reasons I enjoy doing what we do is to really scale and scale well and grow well. It requires some thinking, less spastic action and more thinking. And I would have a tendency to do a lot of spastic actions. And I've seen that with a lot of our lawyers, especially some of the trial lawyers. We have a tendency to be spastic in our hiring and spastic in our actions and not thoughtful. And I think that's really costing us more long-term growth and more long-term revenue because we're not slowing down to think about it, if that makes sense. I just want to spend a few minutes to talk to you about the definition of happiness, because this is one of the things that in the past couple of decades of coaching, advising, being an attorney myself, that I've seen us wrestle with as professionals, as attorneys. And the thing that brings a lot of lawyers to Atticus is I want to make more money. I want to have less stress. I want to have a better practice. But what usually keeps lawyers part of the Atticus community is the conversation of constantly working on a great life. Now, one of the things I will have, and I will get feedback, negative feedback, where people will say, oh my gosh, another conversation on happiness. Why are we talking about happiness? Why are we talking about mental wellness? Why are we talking about this? So the question is really to you, why is this important to you as an attorney, as a leader in our community, as a leader in your community, as a member of, a large board at a major hospital, as a owner of a law firm? Why did you create a scorecard? Tell me the story behind it. What was the challenge? What was going on?
Well, first, let me just confess that I was one of those people that came for the money, but staying for the happiness, the great life. So I think that's important that you talk a lot about that in Atticus about people come in for the money, but then they stay for the great life, and it's so true because that's my journey in Atticus, and there is a direct correlation between how well my practice, and I say my practice, I have an awesome partner in crime, my wife, Carolyn. So our practice, there's direct correlation with our happiness in our journey, mutual happiness, individual happiness, happiness together, and how well we do in our practice. And so I don't have the data points or graph to show you, but I can just tell you anecdotally that looking at times in which we struggled financially in the practice, or there was some sort of struggle or tension within the practice, it was because it was at times that we look at in our life that we were struggling as well. And the converse is true. So it's super, super important. And that is the direct tie into this journey of why I created this happiness scorecard. Is last year was one of those major dips in our practice because there was a major dip in my personal life. I was at probably the lowest point, not probably the lowest point that I've ever been in my life from a mental perspective, from a health perspective overall, because mental health is your health, but physically wasn't healthy either. And I was extremely depressed, and not just, oh, I'm feeling depressed. Like we're going to open up the dictionary and look up the word depressed as clinically depressed. I was at a point that was just, I had never experienced before. And I couldn't understand why I couldn't get over things. People that knew me didn't know what was going on. And it was challenging, and it was affecting our practice, the way in which we were working with clients, where we were working as a team. I became very isolated, or I isolated myself, and I didn't want to go networking. I didn't want to come to work. I didn't want to visit with clients. And my team tells me I did a good job masking a lot of that in the office with clients. Like they would have no idea. But that was so draining. Like I would come home and I'd just be totally wiped. Imagine your busiest day at your best moment, whether you're in the office, you're in trial, you still come home tired. It's mentally exhausting. On top of that, if you're trying to be someone you're not at that moment, it's like 3 times as tiring. And then I didn't want to get out of bed. On top of that, just because I was depressed. So that got to a point where what can I do differently? And there's a larger conversation here, of course, that we're not going to get into today beyond the scope, but just taking one part of it was I'm not happy. I'm not happy with my life. I'm not happy in life. Nothing makes me happy. And the scariest part, Steve, was when I couldn't laugh at stand-up comedy anymore or something funny that my kids were doing. I couldn't join in the laughter of family time. I was at a big family gathering. I married into a large Catholic family, and we love to play cards. So the 14 of us were sitting down at the long table in their house playing cards, and everyone's laughing except me. And no one's noticing that really, but except me. I'm like, I don't find this funny. Not that I don't think it's funny intellectually. I know it's funny, but I can't laugh. I don't have this emotion. It's a dearth of emotion. And I'm watching stand-up comedy. And I'm trying to now. This is like a drug. Okay, this is going to stimulate me. I'm listening to all my favorite comedians, and nothing is triggering anything. And I got scared. Like, oh my gosh, it's like people lost a sense of smell when they got COVID. I lost laughter. I lost happiness in this. And so I was freaked out and trying to figure out what to do. And that's really the launch pad of all of this. Moving from there, working with my therapist, working with my psychiatrist, working with you, frankly, and other people in DYM, just trying to move forward. And then what can we focus on? And that is really what the driver was, and looking at the happiness scorecard. And what Atticus teaches, if you can't improve and progress if you can't measure. So thinking about that, usually we're thinking about KPIs, key performance indicators in our practice. There isn't an indicator for happiness. How do you define happiness? I still remember when I mentioned this idea to you initially, or you said to me, and you said, you're going to have to figure out a way in which you can measure and score happiness. And as soon as you said it, I was like, oh crap, how the heck am I going to do that? Like, how do you define happiness? And so that is the pickup point of where this all came up from, is trying to define happiness for me.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I want to spend a moment on one thing, but I don't want to get bogged down on it. This is a really important conversation for me because of the statistics in the legal industry. And the statistics are pretty brutal. I've talked about them before, is that 1 out of 2 lawyers is expressing a high level of burnout. Number 2, our depression and anxiety levels are 4 times of the national average, and suicide rates are 3 times the national average. We're really having a crisis inside our own community that's eating us alive from the inside, and we're afraid to talk about it. So I really appreciate your courage to come and talk about it. I usually call it, when somebody's in that spot, I call it the pit of despair, and you can't get out of the pit of despair by wishing, by thinking your way through it. When people like Robin Williams commit suicide, who is a celebrity, wealthy, known movie star, a very funny person, right? Then it really gives you the ability to understand that when you get to a certain point, you are too impaired to understand. You're cognitively and emotionally impaired to understand that you are now in the pit of despair. So I really appreciate you having the courage to come on and talk about it, because it takes some courage to say, hey, look, I came for the money, which you got. I stayed for the great life, but somewhere along the process, the wheels kind of came off my emotional wagon, my happiness wagon. And for whatever reasons, they came off. Today's conversation, and the reason you and I are having with, and hopefully people from the audience will look at this and listen to it, as that you have kind of 2 levels of this emotion. And there's an emotional awareness around what happiness is, emotional awareness around gratitude. There's emotional awareness around contentment. So I like scorecards, and I like what you've done here, because it requires you to ask some serious questions of yourself. And I'm sure there's somebody laughing somewhere. Give it to two lawyers to figure out a way of scoring happiness. But it's really one lawyer, one human being asking themselves, what does happiness look like to me? What are the behaviors that I have to put in my life? What are the habits I have to put in my life? What are the structures I have to put in my life? And what are the expectations in my heart and soul about what happiness looks like to me? So as you listen to this as an audience member, I'm going to invite you to listen from Kevin's journey and Kevin's exploration. And Kevin's going to walk through some of the criteria that he determined for happiness. But I'm going to ask you to listen from your perspective, whether that criteria works for you. All right. So one of the challenges, we're assigning all in, we've assigned all in for the first quarter of 2025. So all the lawyers in our group programs are reading it. I'm hoping the one-on-one clients are reading it. And it's a very powerful message. But one of the concerns I have is that a lot of the lawyers are just not like managing their firm. They're not sitting behind a desk, working like a CEO. Most of them are billable producers. Most of them are managing cases. So stepping away from a client case for them feels like a waste of time, or worse, a financial risk causing cash flow problems. How would you advise them to shift their thinking about this? And what would be like a practical piece of advice you'd give someone to do in the first 90 days?
Yeah. So the first thing is framing who you intend to be. Do you want to be a lawyer or an owner of a law firm? And those are two significantly different roles, and both are very important. We have the right to choose. But do you want to practice law, or do you want to build an organization that practices law? If you become an owner, your responsibility is to not do the job, but to create jobs. In fact, there was an interesting statistic that I read. It came out from some government census. 17% of the population ever attempts to start a business, including a law firm. 17%. So in kindergarten, there was 20 kids in my class. That's 4 kids. But the other statistic, which is even more interesting to me, is only 20% of people who start a business sustain it successfully, profitably, for a 5-year or more period. Most people phase out, or if they sustain, it's check-to-check survival. So 20% times 17% is 3%. That means one kid from your kindergarten class, Steve, one kid from my class started a business. So you and I are the exception. Now, here's the other interesting thing. The other 97% of the population is looking for good jobs with good organizations to do good things, to live a good life. Just like the intention of this podcast is live a good life. Our job is to create jobs so people can have a good life. So what we can do the next 90 days is decide, am I a lawyer or am I an owner of a law firm? And make that transition. The second thing is just to walk away from the law firm, meaning the law practice, and start owning. It's such an abrupt shift that would probably be damaging. So we do it through what's called fractionalization. What you can do today is you write down every task that you do, the dozens, 100+ tasks you do. Then realize to find someone that can replace you is a near impossibility. Yet that's what many business owners do. I need to find my clone. Well, if there's a clone exist, she already owns a law firm. We're not going to find it.
And they're not going to come work for you.
Yeah, no, they're already got their own thing going on. So the expectation is very unrealistic. But there are fractions of us. There's people that want to do the administrative functions that we do. There are people that want to do the research we do. There's people that want to be in their courtroom. And you can break this up perhaps to 3 or 4 people on a part-time basis or a contractual basis. But start pulling fractions of yourself out. And that's how you start extracting yourself from the business.
Where do you start on the extraction? On things that you're weak at, the things that you love? How for you?
Oh, great question.
How would you do
it? Ironically, many people don't say the things you love. Yeah, it's actually the thing you love that you want to delegate first. And this is not what we're traditionally taught. We're traditionally taught is what's the easiest thing to get rid of you, and that's a nuisance. And the idea is that it alleviates you from doing it. But here's the trap. When you alleviate stuff you don't like to do and you start doing stuff you like to do, you're more likely to do more of it. So if you like a certain activity, now you start encapsulating it and controlling it as if it's only yours. And that becomes a problem. We call this the superhero complex. You're the only person that can do it. I'm a linchpin. So delegation is actually take something that you enjoy, you love doing, and give that to someone else. it builds the discipline of learning how to teach something and letting go of something. The biggest challenge in delegation is not actually training someone else, it's actually letting go. And so learn to let go of what you love to find your new love of operating a business. Now, those nuisances and stuff, those things have to go away too, but start with what you love.
That's great, Mike. It's brilliant because one of the arguments we make with our clients is one of the most important jobs they have is to kill the hero on the side of the law firm.
Oh
And
my
usually,
God, that's so great. Yeah.
yeah, so when they come inside the law firm, they're the hero. Like only they can do this, only they can do that. Only they can meet with a client, only they can respond to emails, only they can work late nights and weekends. And so I think the heroic mindset, you totally nailed it. And it's true genius to say, give away the thing that you love. Now, for some of them, it's going to be difficult because for some of the lawyers, that might be going to court, trial work. So it's going to be difficult. So how would you address? I'm a recovering trial lawyer, so and I will concede that quickly. But how would you address that for me? Because I'm not going to be able to find probably someone to try cases for me. What what would I peel away next? What would I love next?
Yeah, so let's look at all the elements that are necessary for trial law, the preparation, the displays and evidence procurement, all those different elements. And then say, what's one piece I enjoy doing, but I'm not necessary to do, and assign that out. The other interesting thing about the practice of delegation is starting off with small bits is the way to do it. When there's a full abatement of all the things I do and I just give it to someone else, I abandon everything. It's such an abrupt shift. It's like Superman saying, "Here, police force, take care of this." They're not bulletproof. They're not at that level yet. They're gonna get overwhelmed, and then Superman uses that as an affirmation, saying, "See, they need me." So can we just give a little piece to them? So look at what you do holistically that you love, and break into the smallest pieces you can, and start assigning out little pieces just to get that under your belt.
I got it. So we start to take slivers of the things that we love and say,
Slivers.
okay, I need to develop the skill as a business owner. And this is one of the arguments I've had is that you have the legal skills and you have the business owner skills. And the business owner skills are where you drive revenue. And so those might be your time management, your marketing, but your management and leadership is a business skill. So the thing that you're making a really fantastic argument for is choose to be the business owner, choose to develop other people, choose to employ other people. And I think the blind spot, and I've done, I haven't really read the statistics, but I've kind of done a little bit of analysis. I don't recall the statistics completely. But, when I look at lawyers, I agree with you. The business owners are probably somewhere between 3 to 5% of the population, depending on how you organize, by employees, revenues, time in business. If you're a lawyer, running your own practice and you probably have more than 5 or 6 employees, you're kind of a freak inside the industry by itself. So you have to kind of break through the conversations of what are considered normal ways of practicing, normal ways of thinking, and focus on those business skills. So I think I'm very excited about this. I'm very excited about the conversation.
Steve, you mentioned a summary. Are you ready for that?
I'm ready. So what I did, I was inspired years ago by a book I read. And afterwards I said, these are better than lessons. What I'm going to do, and if you want a copy of this, we'll put a way to give you a copy of this probably in the show notes. But for fun, I took these lessons and turned them to laws. So I'm going to give these to you and just for fun, read them to you and see what you think, but they're kind of fun. Because after doing this, I was like, wow, I should write these down somewhere because these are pretty good. These are things that I could live by if I wanted to live by these. So here's number 1. Always strive to make your next performance better than your last. Doesn't matter what you're doing, what you did yesterday or what you did a few minutes ago, do the next one better. Number 2, always hear criticism as coaching for growth. It's kind of a good thing to live by. If people are giving you feedback, you might as well listen to it from the perspective that they're trying to help, not trying to hurt. Number 3, always learn from everyone by tuning into their unique perspective. Everybody has a different journey in their life, and everybody can offer a different contribution to your journey. Sometimes we don't take the time to listen. We don't take the time to hear. Sometimes we don't take the time to learn. And that's one of the things I've learned from the privilege of being in this particular role. 4, Always turn pain into progress by learning from every challenge. You stay with the pain until you learn from the pain. If you don't transform the pain into a lesson, it just stays pain. So if you have pain anywhere in your life, take a moment, look and say, okay, what is the lesson that I can learn from this pain and move it forward? Because until you transform the pain into a lesson, your brain, your heart will continue to hold on to the pain. It will continue to haunt you. So take it, transform it, and move it into a lesson. Always invest in growth by embracing necessary risks. You can't get with what you want without taking some form of risk. Number 6, always invest in courage. It sparks inspiration and elevates us all. Your courage will inspire somebody else. Their courage will inspire you. Once you invest the courage, it's like a ripple in a pond. You throw a big rock in, it's going to cause a ripple. It's going to hit the side of that pond and ripple back to you. Someone will throw in a bigger rock, a bigger act of courage, and inspire you. But courage always inspires human beings to play at a different level. It elevates us all. So invest in your own courage, support other people that are taking courageous acts. 7, always cultivate your life by earning greatness daily. Now, note that I said daily. Greatness is a daily act. It's a character act. It's a habit building act. It's something that you're doing every day to improve who you are and how you perform. Number 8, always embrace the great practice, great life journey. Now, for us, this is an infinite game. This is the why that we're supporting as an organization. I'm going to encourage you that if you're part of our audience, you maybe have perhaps bought into the possibility that you're playing a great practice, great life game. If you are, embrace it as a journey and say, okay, what's my great practice, great life journey going to be? Whatever that may be. And if you don't have a great practice, then just play for a great life journey. But the question becomes, how do you do that? How do you embrace it? How do you embrace that infinite game that you want to play? Number 9, always recognize that everyone's helping you, even when you don't see it. This is an interesting one for me, Valerie, because I think a lot of people in life, myself included, are blind to the fact that a lot of people are trying to help me win one way or the other. And it's kind of a gratitude practice for me. Everybody's trying to help me win in some way, shape, or form. I think this is where luck comes from. If you start looking that you're a lucky person and you think that luck happens to you, you find luck everywhere. I think if you believe that everyone's trying to help you win, you will find everyone trying to help you win. 10, always make yourself part of a community where everyone is playing a game that inspires you to play better. This is what our listeners are doing. This is what our audience is doing. This is what our members are doing. They're part of a community where everyone is playing in a way that helps you play better. And I think that is the core of our audience. They're supporting each other, they're listening, they're encouraging each other, and they're trying to collaborate to help each one play better because they know ultimately the stronger the community is, the larger the community is, the more we're all supported by the strength of that community. So those are my summary. If you're interested, we'll put something in the show notes where you can access this summary if you want it. We'll memorialize it in some way, shape, or form. But I'm printing it out because I like it. It's worked for me in preparing for this. Valerie, any thoughts for you?
Just thank you, Steve. These were really, really great lessons. You were vulnerable with us as you were going through those, and just the fact that you said, I want to share the lessons that I've learned from doing 100 podcast shows that humility. It shows that you are living this lifetime journey of growth and having an open mindset, remaining curious, figuring out how you can achieve greatness daily. So I think it's really important for you to realize that how you are showing these lessons, how you're living these lessons in what you do on this podcast for our members and for this company, and also as my friend. And so I don't want to forget to thank you for that as well.
Thank you. It's in retrospect, it was 100 great podcasts. It was 100 conversations with amazing human beings that are trying to make a difference for other human beings. While they were contained inside a medium we call a podcast, it's really 100 people that are trying to help other people in whatever way they can. So that really, for me, ultimately is the big takeaway. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Valerie, anything you want to say before we wrap up?
Thank you, Steve, for letting me come on and have this conversation with you. I always take so much from our conversations. So thank you.
And Valerie, thank you for being here. Thank you for the leadership that you continue to exhibit. Thank you for the support. And thank you for all the coaching that you've given me over the years on how I can be better at so many different things. With that, we will wrap up this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, please don't hesitate to give us feedback. And thank you. Thanks for joining this week's episode of Great Practice, Great Life. Please tune in weekly to get the next episode. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, like, and don't hesitate to share it with a friend who you think this episode could help. With that, thanks, and I hope you enjoy next week's episode.